Okay, we're at 12:05. Thank you everyone for joining. I know it is lunchtime, but Danny, Susan, and myself welcome you, especially we've got also Emmanuel and Miles Faulkner from Blended Perspectives. Our talk today is going to be presented by Miles, but before we hand that stage over to Miles to speak about the Jira integration apps in Marketplace, I wanted to just put some focus on the screen you see in front of you with regards to Atlassian Team 21. That's the virtual summit. As you can see, the counter there saying we've got about just under 7 days away. So April 28th. If you haven't registered, please do so. We will try and get you any of the codes that we have access to. I think we couldn't find them. They were published to us. We'll have to dig them up. That was my bad, actually. I should have had that ready. But we will share those at the end of this, after this session. But please do go ahead and register. Once you register, if you get the code from us, you can always go back and add that code later on. But please make sure you go in there. There's a lot of good content that's going to be coming up. There's a list of a few things that they've already got planned there. At that end, I will pass the stage over to Miles from Blend Perspectives, and we'll be presenting the information with regards to the integration apps that they've reviewed in Marketplace. Miles?
Cool. Hi there, everybody. I'm just going to drop off video while I do the presentation, so bear with me a second. All right. Let's make this presentation. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Escape. Let's go back to the beginning. It's going to be difficult. All right. I know why that is. Highlight the slide. There we go. All right. Hi, everybody. So this is a category report from us on integration. Just a little bit about my background. I know a lot of the people on here, but not everybody. I'm the CEO of Blended Perspectives. I've been around the block a fair while, and Martin Cleaver is my partner. We are a large, if not the largest, platinum partner in Canada, but we also operate out of the US. We're just going to talk a little bit about the background, the methodology, principles about integration that we believe is important, kind of point of view, integrations, market overview, sort of an overall model, categorizations, and a wrap. Now, just bear in mind, I'm not an expert across all of these different apps. It's a lot of ground to cover, and I don't know, certainly don't know all the answers, but Nick, Emmanuel are on the call, and we'll certainly get back to you with any detailed questions that you have. Quick note about us, we do all of the things that you would expect an Atlassian partner to do. So I won't, spend a great deal of time on that. And again, we are certainly, we provide dedicated account management, industry insight. Synthesis is a little different, though. You probably don't know a great deal about that. Synthesis is our library of templates, just like our friends ThinkTilt, who were just acquired by Atlassian. ThinkTilt has 300 forms that you can take advantage of as part of your Jira user experience, whether that's in service management or in general terms. We also have a large number of templates of issue types, workflows, and as well as how to plug all of that into an overall blueprint for a solution. So let's get let's talk about, integration and why it's so pivotal in what we're doing. So you've seen these kinds of statements: to drive big value in the enterprise, we all have to get in sync and stay in sync. Connected enterprise is key to competing in the modern economy. But how many times have you heard this? I mean, really, it's motherhood, right? There's probably a deck on digital transformation in every one of your companies, that talks about this business of enterprise integration. And usually, it's a false dawn. And so one of the things that we like to think of when it comes to integration is methodology-driven integration versus, if you like, the yin and yang of separation by fortress architectures. In other words, trying to be realistic, about what integration you can get. And when we talk about methodology-driven integration, what we're seeing in the market right now is a great deal of methodologies, that are all about integration, right? Or really getting rid of these different systems and siloed processes. ITIL 4 is a very good example of that. ITIL 4 screams integration across the enterprise in terms of value streams. SAFe doesn't understand organizational boundaries or different systems, or so it would seem. Gartner's flogging integrated, governance, risk, and compliance. Enterprise relationship management, where service desks are used for different departments well outside of IT and ITSM. So these methodologies speak to, integration, cooperation, they speak to value delivery, and they speak to performance over control. But unfortunately, we are actually faced with a reality in our enterprises, which is really this business of separation by fortress architectures. When it comes to our CRM system, it's Salesforce. ServiceNow in ITSM. You could have a lockpath or a metric stream type solution in your governance, risk, and compliance. Certainly Jira is most likely to be in your SDLC and DevOps. Your ERP will be Oracle. Your PPM, if you're unfortunate enough, will be a Clarity or a PlanView. And then there are many others. And it's kind of illustrative to me, that this is a landscape which we've all, come to know and pretty well understand. Yet for my own organization, we started out saying to ourselves, the worst thing we can do is buy more systems, is buy more applications. And so, for instance, on a CRM front, whilst we look after our website using a traditional tool like a Sharp Spring, we do all our forecasting in Jira, because that's where our resource management forecasting is required. So we don't want to have a separate system like Salesforce, where we can't forecast in a meaningful way about how to really run the business. And so essentially, I guess my answer to the fortress problem is, if you can't have one platform, at least join the integration party. And so that kind of is the mantra which makes integration such a very interesting category. Now, some of you are obviously familiar with our methodology and approach, but some of you may be new to one of these sessions. So when we started this, we really felt that the marketplace is just a giant functional laboratory. It's this kind of enormous place where a huge amount of innovation is taking place, at light speed. But there are some issues with it, and one of them is it kind of is more like a marketplace in a way that makes it difficult to distinguish between which app you should be using. We know that sometimes Atlassian service providers internally simply respond to whoever says, I've got money, this is the app that I want. Whereas there can be a more strategic way of looking at these categories. And for us, we decided that we would not get into the application business. We would not develop third-party apps. We wanted it to be more objective. Now, one key differentiator, or one key thing about our approach, is that we reorganized all the categories. We didn't like the categories as they're set up, And it's acknowledged that these categories, are self-selected by the vendors. Now, what this means is essentially that these vendors will say, I want to be in as many categories as I can. But that doesn't mean that it's helpful to the broader set of customers to decide, for instance, in diagramming, I want a diagramming app, but there are 243 apps in diagramming and charting, which when we all know there's 3 or 4 that really are specific to the diagramming. Now, as you can see, we've used Jira to the point that I made earlier about not buying other systems. We did have the choice to build this Mars capability, using perhaps a relational database separate to Jira. But what we realized was that we interacted with the vendors that we're measuring and so forth. And so we wanted to have a fully integrated solution so that these products and these line items could all be made available to our corporate operation. So one of the things that we can do is do some pretty funky diagrams. Joseph Law, who's our chief analyst, really has kind of excelled himself, in this regard. And what you're seeing here is the number of apps on the left, the number of instances, it represents the circles, and the growth is represented on the x-axis. And so what you see is why integration is so pivotal, is because it's such a large category and it's growing. So it's really the #1 category in the marketplace by a long shot. And if you're not integrating in Jira, then either you've solved the problem of fortress architectures, or potentially you're missing out on ways to hack that integration more successfully across an enterprise. The other thing that this analysis allows us to do is to zero in on where the action is, okay? Because what we know is that there are about 1,000 or 1,100 vendors, and 260 of them, or just 20%, constitute 531 apps here out of 3,500, but that's generating about 83% of all instances. And so that's, I think, a very important consideration. And so as part of our research service to clients, we're able to tell you, which are the ones that matter and why. So again, from an integration perspective, you can see that it's the biggest category, and followed by these guys. And as I perhaps mentioned to you before, we have category reports in many of these categories, whether it's planning, diagramming, scripting and automation. We've done time management, we've got reporting, administration, and we have test management. I think that's pretty well it. And these reports can be made available to you on a custom basis. Okay, so, when it comes to integration, we're focused really on Jira here, mainly. You can see that most of the integration action is in Jira in any case, and it drops off pretty spectacularly. So big numbers on Jira integration. This category is different than a lot of other categories. We see a lot of free apps in this space, and I think it's because it's perceived to be, in and of itself, not potentially hugely complex or value added. There are also a number of vendors who are attempting to get you to use their product and to try to leverage off of, the Atlassian user base because of the by providing, free integration apps. Now, I'm not sure whether you can see this all that. But the top 10 paid apps, Git integration for Jira is the biggest one, followed by Jenkins, and then it gets kind of smaller and smaller and smaller. But I don't know. I mean, I think that this obviously shows that DevOps is the big integration kind of play in this space when you really add up Jenkins and Git in Jira integration. platform breakdown, again, we see that there are a solid number of apps that are all cloud and data center and server enabled. There's only a relatively smallish number that are cloud only. And so this is a good story. Now, so what we have done, and we'll take you through this model, is that we felt when we put our categories together that if you were an integration app, you really should fall into one big integration bucket. But we also recognized that there were different reasons for doing integration. So what we wanted to do was provide secondary categories here. And as you can see, collaboration is the top ranking integration secondary category. And it just gives you a sense also of the wide array of functional applications that you can get from it. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what's integration inside integration? Well, we also feel there are certain apps that are dedicated to bimodal, communications, and not necessarily a target of their own from a product perspective. And we'll get into kind of what that's about as well. And although this is a relatively small number, I guess, to the total, these are still big numbers. And I guess it's important to remember that because this is such an enormous category in and of itself, even when you get down to integration, we're still talking 5,000 instances. And just remember, when it comes to the competition, ServiceNow only has about 6,000 customers. So when we talk about these categories, we're talking about a very substantial market size. So there's still very important use cases that live inside each of these. Okay, so when it comes to the targets of integration, this is clearly the story. It's Microsoft. And this speaks to really the success of Teams and the integration cases that we see, between Jira and Microsoft. Closely followed by DevOps and Git with Zendesk and these other apps, which I think we do touch on a bit later on in terms of use cases. There were other targets which because of the sheer size of the other scale, we decided to put a second chart together. So as I mentioned to you before, Jenkins is a big one, Google is a big one, Salesforce is here, and so on. So let's just go through this again then. We start with the marketplace. We have the BP primary categories for which we're talking integration. And then the secondary categories, what we're going to take you through is collaboration, integration, code management, requirements management, service management, planning. And then there are the application targets to which these apps are integrating with. So it's a bit of a complicated little puzzle, but we'll try to, walk through, how this hangs together as we go. So when it comes to collaboration targets, we've really divided this into kind of Microsoft and Slack. And although Microsoft is very large, we would say that there's still a large number of Slack integrations. So these are the two kind of heavy hitters. And of course, when all is said and done, Microsoft Teams for Jira is the big one. And then it sort of distributes across a number of these smaller products. Slack, for instance, is sort of distributed into 3 here. So let's just talk about, this Microsoft Teams for Jira. We recently implemented Teams ourselves. We did so, although we are a Slack shop. We did this because we found that many of our clients were using Teams and it was not so much of an obstacle. to set up, dedicated chat discussions with them. And we also recognize that because Teams is such a big integration, it was important for us to really understand it and get into it. Now, as you can see here, what is very interesting about this interface is that Teams itself allows for you to avoid context switching. So you can be working inside Teams and working on other work. So here's an example of working on Jira issues together without having to leave Microsoft Teams. Now, naturally, this is still an integration, but it certainly, makes it an interesting world where everybody is fighting for your single interface. And it kind of really speaks again to that point that I made earlier, which is, this is an interesting way to hack and bring together true integration. You can have a central feed for all you do, and it creates a narrative. So in much the same way as we do in Slack, we can set it up so that anything that's going on in Jira can go into a channel. You can chat in the channel. You can do all the usual things in the channel. Now we do some video conferencing in Teams, but we don't really like the quality of it, so we've stuck with Zoom for any critical meetings. But essentially, if you're a Teams shop and you're doing a lot of conversations at a teamwork level in Teams, you're really missing the boat if you're not integrating Jira with it, because as versions, releases, incidents, problems, all of the things that the development teams are working on can be a part of an ongoing narrative and a history of the project. And as I said, here's an interesting thing where we've set up a deposit notice by one of our customers into the bank, and it's we turn these into service desk tickets, and then keeps us all aware of what's going on, and we can have a billing channel, an accounting channel, and again, cross-functional processes being supported by our conscious strategy to as much as we can in Jira, as well as the Microsoft Teams integration in the discussion. So there's this capability called Help, which is something that Atlassian acquired, and it's pre-installed on Jira Cloud. And it just makes it so much easier to integrate with Slack and Microsoft Teams, going forward. And you can see that you can do things like turn direct messages into tickets by attaching ticket emoji, this kind of thing. You can create customizable forms to categorize requests as well, which is kind of cool. And so we're really bringing together work all in one kind of little universe going forward. You can answer and edit tickets from Slack so that, again, you don't have to context switch, and you can, work with a ticket even in the channel. Here's another example of notifications alerting users to when things change in Jira, and so on. Again, issue view reduces time switching to and from Jira and Slack. You can even create new issues from Slack with configurable fields and automatic synchronization. So, some people take the integration between the chat channel, and Jira pretty seriously. And and want to spend as much time as they like, as they can in Slack, as opposed to, you know, working in Jira. And, you know, that's just really a conscious decision, you know, depending on the way that you go about doing work. So when it comes to Slack integration for Jira, again, here you see we have like so many channels. We create a channel, you know, when we do an event, and here you can see a whole bunch of activity that's taking place in terms of our internal requests for work and support from Hassam, who's our IT guy. And again, you can see that we use Slack in this context pretty heavily. Okay, so we kind of covered, you know, collaboration. So let's talk now about integration as a pure integration product, and we've even got sort of a use case for you on integration. When it comes to general integration apps, Exalate, Jira Issue Sync, and more is the market leader. Backbone Issue Sync is close behind it. Power Database Fields and Divinity's Issue Sync were the ones that we've kind of selected for the discussion. I believe that just today we're just going to deal with Exalate as the product that we know the best. Yeah, so Exalate, Jira Issue Sync, and more is a very powerful tool. And, you know, I think we've used it in action and we like it. What Exalate does is it essentially provides pre-packaged, if you like, integrations with applications like ServiceNow, GitHub, Zendesk, Azure DevOps, Jira to Jira. And it links external facing Jira with multiple internal trackers. It provides essentially a sort of bi-directional syncing. And if you think about, you know, what are all the reasons why I would want to do this? Well, you know, there are many, not the least of which is if you happen to have, say, a number of large Jira instances, or you want to get another instance to focus on a certain type of application that might, for instance, require some heavy lifting. An example of that might be testing with X-Ray, where a lot of activity takes place, a lot of issues are created. You can basically operate a completely seamless operation where, whilst the test cases are generating issues in one instance, those tickets or faults or problems it can be synchronized in the backlog of agile teams or software development teams. So that's kind of an example of where you would want to do you know, bi-directional syncing when a defect is fixed in the software development project. You'd want that defect to have its status change in the other Jira instance. You know, if you're doing CRM, opportunities may generate work. You know, if you have you know, ServiceNow or another service management system, it's bound to be the source of problems and issues from customers. And again, you would want the ticket to be updated if the development team is fixing it. So you want something that's powerful, that scales with a minimum amount of scripting and coding, and these tools provide that. So you can, this is a kind of an example of the configuration. You can set up different types of connection types, and it understands these applications. They understand that they have to go to places which they're not allowed, and so they've got the ability to work with different security schemes.
Miles,
yeah.
Miles, quick question. For example, with Jira Cloud,
yeah.
You know, there's a limitation of how many users per instance you can have. Would Exalate help if, let's say, we wanted to set up 2 instances to support the number of users, beyond 25,000 and use that to synchronize between the two instances of Jira, acting as one large instance. Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't think there's a, you know, these Exalate just operates on the basis of syncing the issues. It's not a user-based consideration. So for sure, you know, you could say, look, this cloud instance is going to be for my PPM. You know, this cloud instance is going to be for my service desks. You know, this other one's going to be for this other one, and you could just agree on how you want to synchronize across the instances. So you know, but you know, I think it's a good approach if that's your concern. We'd have to sort of dig in and look at more detail, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
No. The usual things you'd expect to see, you know, customizable automatic error notifications, the sync status, and various ways of searching for all issues that are in sync. As you can imagine, if you do go down this road, things could get very messy very quickly if you don't have the necessary, you know, intelligence and tools to manage these kinds of synchronizations. So we've got a little case study for you. I think you're all familiar with ITIL 4. If not, I can give you the Coles Notes version of it. But essentially, ITIL 4 is speaking to this idea that ITSM shouldn't really work in isolation from development teams. And we've all known that for a long time. But we also know that, you know, the ITSM world can be very structured. It can be very rule-based with fairly strict SLAs and things like that. And will have its own systems and ways of doing things. But the reality is that, you know, it's application development that goes into releases, and it's releases that, you know, go through the change management process, and it's problems that customers have with applications and systems that end up getting into service desks, which end up need to be fixed by the development teams. And never more so is this true when you get agile teams that are building and releasing software very quickly. You need a framework to try to bring everybody together in terms of a value stream. And that's often where SAFe and ITIL 4 really come into play. So what essentially happened here was that we worked with Rogers to use Exalate to integrate Remedy, Micro Focus, that's the old HP ALM testing solution, and ServiceNow with Jira Software. Very successful project. We're proud of the work that we did there, alongside, you know, the PPM solution that we built for Rogers. And you know, I mean, they really have a vision for making sure that they're operating a fully, you know, integrated operation. Now, I think we all know they had a couple of problems the other day, but nevertheless, I promise you, they have a very visionary and well-organized approach to integrating their enterprise from, you know, the trouble spots and the testing spots into their development teams, and they used Exalate to do that, and it's been, you know, it's been terrifically successful. Okay, so back again to our model. We talked about collaboration, we talked about integration as pure integration. So let's talk about code management. So again, you know, code management is Git, closely followed by Jenkins, and then we fall away. In terms of the Git products, Git integration for Jira, big brass band, big one. GitLab.com for Jira Cloud, also pretty big, also experiencing significant growth. Jenkins, and then down through here. You wouldn't see a Bitbucket because it's already natively integratable. You don't need a product to integrate with Jira. So it's probably, you know, it's probably the total Bitbucket instances, making the assumption that the majority of them are integrated with Jira. We should probably have had a look at that as though it were an implied integration. It's a good idea. I'll try and remember to do that next time. Let's talk quickly about requirements management. InVision, Zeppelin, Figma. These are the big three. Again, pretty big numbers here, guys. 7,000, through 6,000. So you're talking about 13, talking about nearly 20,000, instances of requirements management targets for Jira. And again, I'm not surprised, because essentially what we're saying is when we do our requirements management, when we build our UIs, whatever it is that we do that specifies, what we want to build, we want to track our development team's efforts against those. And here's some rate of growth here that's interesting. This Figma for Jira is the fastest growing app in this space, which probably speaks to some things that in Figma that are beneficial. You can pair InVision, you can pair design prototypes with Jira issues. Here you can see attach a prototype. Expand the preview to see full-size prototypes within Jira. So kind of like if you recall in PPM, you can see the hierarchy that a particular task, issue, or deliverable is in a pane. You can sort of see the thing you're building in the ticket. I can imagine why that's very appealing. Add and view comments to prototypes within Jira. So in other words, be able to make comments on the requirements and have it fed back into both the requirements tool and in Jira. Zeppelin allows you to attach live embeds of designs as well, which is pretty cool. In addition, you've got your two-way collaboration where both the requirements are connected in Jira as well as in Slack. So let's talk service management now. Zendesk, is the biggest by quite reasonable proportions, that just speaks to the sheer popularity of Zendesk. In terms of growth, we're seeing PagerDuty is pretty fast moving. Freshdesk Jira integration, it's interesting amount of growth, pretty flat. Zendesk is very similar to Jira Service Management. You can easily link Zendesk tickets to Jira issues, the usual use cases, notify Jira users through comments in Zendesk, tags from Zendesk to Jira are shared. Jira users have a complete view of customer conversations related to an issue, and Jira users can choose to notify either the customer or the Zendesk support agent. You can change Zendesk ticket status from Jira and update ticket information that way. Again, you can connect to Zendesk and select which ticket fields to display, and again, use workflow to automatically notify linked Zendesk tickets. Finally, a little bit of planning. Again, I wouldn't suspect it's a big surprise that companies, for whatever reason, like to do their planning outside of Jira. I can't imagine really why though, but perhaps for historic reasons or for different reasons. Relix, Miro, and obviously Trello are hitters here. I think I know what the problem is here. Let's just ignore this. Yeah, I embedded some extra pictures, but I think you're all familiar with the Trello integration. Essentially, you know, a lot of companies want to do their planning in Trello, and so essentially we would expect to see, you know, make a task in Trello for a business project and see that that task is also reflected in Jira and being worked on by the different companies. So I just want to finish off with some thoughts about how to think about IT at an enterprise level. You know, intake is really often where work starts, right? A service desk, automated messages, email, forms, all of these things are driving work wherever you are in an enterprise. And some of them, you know, are, in fact, in most cases, Atlassian can support this, but email is not Atlassian. And automated messages can come from any number of sources. Some could come from, you know, OpsGenie, but some could come from any number of different alert-based systems. So the question is, what are we going to do with these, you know, intake mechanisms? Well, we're going to process them. We're going to do things with them. We're going to plan them. We're going to assign them. We're going to track them. We're going to deploy them. We could be calculating them if it's a portfolio management system. But we're essentially, we need a processing engine for this. And a lot of people, and certainly myself included, believes that, you know, Jira, you know, and Confluence are very successful applications for doing all of these things. And then the output, we would have results, we'd have reports, we would have completed work, we would have value, resolutions, knowledge. And so if we keep our eyes on making this what we are supporting, we really need to, you know, map our solutions and capabilities around whether this is taking place optimally. Because if we allow ourselves to fall into the trap of fortress architectures, we really are, you know, missing the bill. And it's pretty simple to know whether you are, you know, not taking advantage of these things by simply asking the question, have we integrated ServiceNow with Jira? Because I asked, you know, an executive who was responsible for the ServiceNow installation at a major organization, because she just talked all about their journey to ServiceNow. And I said, you know, I happen to know that you've got a big Jira installation as well. You know, how do you see ITIL 4 or integration across these two platforms? And she looked at me as though I was from another planet. Integration, we haven't even sorted out our core processes and all this sort of stuff. And it just seems a shame to me that we've ended up in some cases with pretty significant silos, which just doesn't optimize these requirements. And so I guess what I'm saying is that even if you have to work with different systems outside of Jira and Confluence, which you most likely do, you really need a plan to take advantage of these integration tools to optimize, you know, what you're doing, because it's all just one big gigantic workflow, you know, from start to finish. And in the end, whether it's enterprise, you know, relationship management using service desks to support all teams, and all of this work and this work, you want to be doing it as effectively and efficiently as possible. And in fact, you know, the acquisition of ThinkTilt by Atlassian sends the clearest signal yet that this is exactly where Atlassian is going to go. ThinkTilt, you know, is the largest form-based vendor for Jira, and there are 300 different forms that cover every conceivable aspect of what you could ask for in an organization. It's got nothing to do with IT or ITSM, and everything to do with what we're looking at here. Forms plus service desk with processing and results. And so just to kind of cap this off, I wanted to make a little bit of a point here, and I'm going to be blunt about the positioning Atlassian vis-a-vis, for instance, ServiceNow. Because I think it's time for us to have the fight. It's time for us to have the debate, the argument, and not treat these different systems as sacred cows. There's a pretty interesting ad that ServiceNow is running, Christmas, which basically was all about Father Christmas and getting Christmas presents and all this sort of stuff. And what's interesting about it for you, the audience, is that what ServiceNow said was, they're a workflows company. So ServiceNow is legitimizing this idea, that workflows really do matter. And, the irony for me, as a long-standing Atlassian partner, is that when it comes to workflows, we are the biggest game in town, right? We are certainly larger, with more customers, and famous for workflows. And so it's ironic, that ServiceNow is attempting to take this space, and it's we shouldn't stand for it. And so they have this mantra called Workflow It, and so we're starting a campaign called We Are Workflows, and we already workflowed it. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing. But the integrations category provides you with an excellent way to really, bring together, the disparate systems in an enterprise, and to optimize your team's performance, going forward. So that's my shtick.
Thank you, Miles. That was really informative. I think I have some follow-up questions with you with regards to the that integration add-on that does the synchronization. Exalate.
Yep.
We'll speak a little bit later on about that on the side. If there are any questions, we have about 8 minutes from if there's anyone online that needs to have any questions answered or pose any other topics that you would like to ask Miles, please feel free.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So,
yes, queen. Yes,
Miles.
my queen. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So for a company that is wanting to reduce their licensing, Zendesk licensing is very expensive, as you know. And is there a way to, by integrating Jira and Zendesk, and it looks like you can perform almost most of the functions that you would, like most of the functions that you would do in Zendesk, it looks like you can do them in Jira, and then it just sort of processes in Zendesk. Is there a way that you can actually reduce the agent licensing in Zendesk by integrating it with Jira and then using Jira for the main portion of doing all your processing?
Well, I would have thought so. I mean, at the end of the day, we know, I don't know Jira, I don't know Zendesk all that well, but I can speak to the use case very closely with JSM. And, we know that in JSM, as tickets are updated in Jira, the status of the ticket changes in Zendesk. And given that we can synchronize back and forth, I would have said that it's fair game to say, look, I probably only need just enough agents in Zendesk to manage the queues and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to assign people to work on these tickets. I'm just going to set it up so that the ticket is automatically routed to a Jira project. All the work gets done there, and then the message is sent back. Why not? Of course, I mean, I don't know why you want to have Zendesk when you've got JSM now, but that's.
Oh, don't worry, we're trying to get it off, but it's not that simple. So we're trying to look for some shortcuts, and it sort of temporary. If we could integrate it, reduce the licensing for a while, and then completely get off of it.
But you're on the right track, because we have clients, Susan, right now that are literally eliminating systems. They're eliminating systems.
Yes.
They've realized that the tools of which I've shown you is just the tip of the iceberg. These tools enable all of these different solutions. So governance, risk, and compliance. There is no need for a separate system in GRC. PPM, you don't need to buy a Clarity or a Plan View. That's just expensive nonsense. You don't need ServiceNow. That's 5 times more expensive, even 10 times more expensive than Jira. People are realizing that what Jira has become is really a low-code, no-code platform, which enables workflows from the start of something being needed to the point of closure. And this ThinkTilt acquisition is a very significant development in terms of supporting enterprise processes, I think. Yeah. So you should be, my message to you guys is be courageous. Go out there to your executives and tell the story that it's a low-code, no-code platform. Forget this business of it just being for development teams, because Atlassian themselves are going to change their story, and they're going to change it pretty quickly. So take advantage of that and go forth.
No, our users want off of Zendesk and onto Jira and onto all of that. It's just that getting there is a bit painful with some of the built-in stuff that they did on Zendesk. So we're trying to maybe transition it a little more seamlessly and eventually get all the way over there. So I was just curious, a lot of it comes down to cost. And if I could save a lot of money by integrating it and reducing Jira Zendesk licenses, I'd be a winner. So I'm going to investigate that. Thank you very much. Do you recommend Exalate or just
no, we like it. Well, the thing is, we've used Exalate in battle, and it's a powerful working solution that's well supported. So it's always the case that we tend to fall back on that. But that's not to say the other products aren't good. They wouldn't have as many instances as they have. So you can be confident if you pick an app that has good instances. One other comment I wanted to make is that in other blueprints that you will have seen, some of you may have seen from us, we've been talking about what we call a user-oriented portal design, which is also kind of a form of integration, I was thinking the other day. So we've just done a demo, just did a demo on integrated service management, which takes many of these different systems that exist in the landscape, whether it's Opsgenie and others. And we used Refined for Jira. You might be familiar with Refined Wiki, but Refined for Jira is an excellent way to front door all your applications, so that some users will never see the core Jira interface. They'll just see the dashboard, the gadgets, and stuff like that. So if you're interested in how Refined for Jira works, and it can act as an integration agent in the sense that you build out your view of how a user should experience using all of these tools in Refined for Jira, and they simply go where they need to go. They don't have to understand how to get there, which I think is a very, very important kind of solution consideration. And that's in our ISM webinar. If you just go to our website and you go to blog, click on webinars, it's there. And you can download the deck from that as well. So, okay, I think we're just about done for time.
Yeah, we are done for the time. Thanks again very much, Miles. One more thing in the chat, if you noticed, we shared the link to the Team 21 registration, as well as the VIP code. So if you guys were looking for that, it is in the chat. It's basically at https://events.atlassian.com/team21. And the code is Team Community VIP, all in caps. Hopefully we'll get to see you guys there, communicate there as well. And once again, Miles, thanks a lot for this session.
We also, Emmanuel has posted that integrated ITSM Beyond JSM webinar link in the chat too, if you're interested.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, thank you very much.
All right, thanks very much, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
All the best and stay safe, guys. Thank you.